join us for this event on youth participation and recovery of Ukraine. It's great to see both familiar and new faces, and a special welcome also to the Ukrainian participants. It's really good to have you here. We offer a simultaneous translation to Ukrainian, and on the PowerPoint slide, you can see how to activate it. A disclaimer at the beginning, the event will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube. My name is Elias Dehnen, and together with my colleague, Dr. Judith Striek, we are happy to host this event. Today's event is organized by the Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine in close cooperation with Kindern. The platform is an initiative of the German government and aims to bring together different stakeholders with an interest in the reconstruction of Ukraine. Kindern is one of Europe's largest children's rights organizations. We are active in 39 countries, and since 2022, we are cooperating with several Ukrainian partner organizations that focus on humanitarian aid and psychosocial support. There is a strong connection between Ukraine's recovery and future prospects of young Ukrainians. Decisions that are being made now will deeply affect their future lives. That's why the perspectives of Ukrainian youth must be heard when the reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine is being planned and implemented. But what does meaningful youth participation actually mean in times of war? What are best practices and challenges of youth councils that are active in Ukraine? How can Ukrainian youth in the diaspora contribute to Ukraine's recovery? And how is all this connected to your working context? We will start with a short introduction to youth participation, to then give the spotlight to our three young speakers, Darina Barenik, Anna Vietrova, and Vlad Levchuk, who will share best practices and challenges of their engagement in Ukraine. You will then have the opportunity to ask questions in a Q&A session, and we will end with a peer-to-peer consultation with the three panelists, dealing with the question of how you can include forms of youth participation into your work in Ukraine. Over the course of this event, feel free to share your questions in the chat. We strongly encourage discussion, and I promise that we will get back to them at some point. I will now hand over to my colleague, Dr. Judith Striek, expert in international human rights law, who will shed light on what meaningful youth participation actually entails.
Thank you very much. I'll give you a very brief overview of the obligations that already exist for youth participation. And from the start, I think it's really important to keep in mind to actually talk with youth and not about them when it comes to the question of participation, but also when it comes to the question of reconstruction of Ukraine. Also because youth as a group is deeply affected by the ongoing conflict. And I think for a start, it's really important to have a common understanding of what participation actually entails. What do we mean when we speak about participation? So here you see an illustration of the ladder of participation. And if you look at the bottom steps, the three bottom steps, which are colored in green, this is actually non-participation. This is what you see a lot when youth, for example, are included in a panel just as decoration, just to say, yeah, we've included them, but they actually do not have any say in what's being decided. It's not their initiative. They're merely a decoration for kind of adult initiatives. So what we should aim for is actually from step 4 onwards going up, where the power of decision-making and the power for initiatives increase with the steps going up for youth to actually make decisions about what they want to engage in, and for example, also how funding should be spent. So this is really important to keep in mind when speaking about participation. What do we actually speak about? And if we look at the human rights conventions, then of course there's the Child Rights Convention, where Article 12 states that participation is a core principle. And this is really important. The Committee on Children's Rights understands this as a very broad obligation concerning all areas that affect the lives of children and youth. But the Child Rights Convention actually only applies to people until they are turning 19. So there's other human rights conventions like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, where you find participation in Article 25. And when we look at youth participation and reconstruction, there is the UN Agenda on Youth, Peace and Security, which was formed in 2015. This is binding together 3 UN Security Council resolutions that focus on youth, peace and security, and they are also calling for meaningful participation of youth in reconstruction. These council resolutions led to national action plans, also to a 5-year UN strategic action plan and guidelines for public officials. And here youth is defined as 18 to 29 years of age. And if you look at the 5-year strategic action plan on youth inclusive peace processes, there are some points I would really briefly highlight. It's really important to move from youth inclusive norms, which we already have, to actually youth inclusive practices. So how do we put this in practice, what we already know is an obligation? And this should not merely be an add-on or a tick box. We've asked some youth and they said something, but they should actually be included in decision making. So the processes of reconstruction should be shaped by the representation and participation of young people, because they are critical and necessary partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. We will now give the floor to our first speaker, Darina Verenik, Secretary General of the Youth Council under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and organizer of the initiative Uniting Ukrainian Youth Abroad. She says, by giving young Ukrainians a seat at the table, we're not just building back, we're building better. Welcome, Darina.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you so much for having me in general for this discussion. I'm truly honored to represent, first of all, Ukrainian youth, both in Ukraine and abroad, but also speak about ourselves, about our activities, projects, and the things that we're doing. So let me briefly give you the introduction that despite the challenges of war, conflict, and all of the situation that is happening in Ukraine, Ukrainian youth is definitely trying to stand strong and ready to lead us, Ukrainians, towards recovery and reconstruction. I will shortly give you my background that I actually used to be part of Ukrainian youth abroad. Because of the full invasion war started in 2022, I had to flee from Ukraine to another country, and I ended up being in the UK, where I sometime later found one of the Ukrainian societies that we had with the Ukrainian students there, and I joined this kind of movement and organization itself because I had previously background in Ukraine with co-founding the biggest student organization of Ukraine, which is now called the Ukrainian Students League. So it was very important for me to belong to some kind of community and help them develop themselves either in doing some projects or doing the basic networking. Now I actually came back to Ukraine for the work and the things and the projects that I'm doing. I used to be the special envoy abroad of this students organization of Ukraine, and now I represent the Youth Council under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I can give you both international and national perspective on Ukrainian youth and talk more about what the news are, but okay, we can face it. Constant news about the war can be very draining to both Ukrainians and international ones. We all understand it. It's like just a heavy weight on our shoulders, and it could sound easier to forget some of the bright future we're working towards, but it's very important to reignite this kind of fire in our youth. And when I came back to Ukraine while having some business trips to go not only to the UK, but I was traveling a lot because of my work, I reminded myself about some of the incredible role our Ukrainian youth is playing, first of all. Second of all, Ukrainian youth abroad, and I'm talking about it in particular, has a great potential towards, for example, non-formal ambassadorship, the things that we're saying, because apart from the embassies, the governments, and the social authorities, non-formal diplomacy in the context of war in Ukraine is crucial, because this is the kind of interaction that we get talking with the internationals, and this is kind of a window that we open when we are trying to talk about Ukraine and the war that we have inside the country. So let's talk about, these are some of the problems and why now we as a youth council and a lot of stakeholders in Ukraine are trying to focus more on the Ukrainian diaspora itself. We're building the national strategy on Ukrainian diaspora that's going to be implemented and pushed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. We are always talking about the need to bring back Ukrainian youth. Of course, is some of the potential that we want to focus on, but also it's very important for us to keep this kind of Ukrainian youth diaspora and understand what their needs are, because as far as my experience is concerned, they are worth being focused on, and their initiatives are worth to be taken into consideration. So what we're doing now, we are building some kind of a unique platform, because no other nation has ever united all the Ukrainian youth that belongs to a particular country, because we understand that it may be the priority. Secondly, I will then explain you briefly the model of our team and how we work, is that we have a link between Ukrainian youth in Ukraine and Ukrainian youth that are living abroad. So our teams are integral. We have representatives of specific country, but also, for example, my team, which I'm super proud of, are also working with each country, understanding their context, their needs, and you can see some of the long-term KPIs that my ambitious team and our ambitious bodies are planning for ourselves, and we're doing this systematic work working with Ukrainian youth. So this is the product I was talking about. We call it a product, but it's actually a communication strategy, why we don't want to separate, for example, Ukrainian diaspora with Ukrainians, because of course, everyone has different problems, even inside the country. We all have different priorities, focuses, etc. But in this crazy process, and in this heavy, for example, situation with the recovery and reconstruction processes, the president's formula, and if you are familiar with 10 points of it, you should understand there is a huge work to be done on this part, and Ukrainian youth can also be part of it. So we're trying to guide them when they organize something, initiate in their countries where they are located, and we're trying to support them. I want to also stress your attention to the fact that Ukrainian youth wealth of diverse experiences, perspectives, and skills. This diversity in terms of reconstruction and recovery is some kind of a treasure, because these are, as I told you, these are some kind of windows, but they are our first points of contact to talk with the international, with foreign people or the citizens of the country that they belong in. So we, for example, in terms of democracy, when we explain, and in Ukraine, it's a huge topic, it's a huge priority, how we form and develop our democracy. We also want to know some of the international perspectives. For example, the Denmark, that has a huge history of setting up democracy, Germany as well, how they are structured, and you are structured enough to set all the processes inside your country. So it is very important for us to know some of these things that are going on in each country. We have a huge focus on Euro integration, and by even aiming towards Euro integration, we're already talking about recovery and reconstruction, because this is not like a very new biases, but some of the innovative background that we are holding and we're putting inside Ukraine when we're talking about reconstruction as well, because reconstruction actually does not start after the war is done. It already starts now. It started yesterday, and we just need to keep the momentum and push it forward. I told you about it a little bit, but I really want to focus on some of the case studies that we, as for example, Ukrainian team, some of the team that is located abroad should be proud of. Totally, we have over 20 countries in our direct network, meaning that we're directly working with most of the European countries. We work with Canada, the US. We had an amazing networking with Ukrainian students and Ukrainian youth in Georgia recently that have, of course, a very different context, but we're trying to understand their needs. So what we do and what Ukrainian does in terms of reconstruction, you can see some of the examples that the UK-based Ukrainian societies did on innovative ideas on recovery and reconstruction. They participated in Ukraine Recovery Conference last year. They're always inviting some of the best speakers, both Ukrainian ones and international ones, talking about, for example, one of just out of my mind idea on the veterans reform in Ukraine and how they try to take some of the experience that the UK had in terms of implementing veterans policies, implementing female veterans policies, and trying to bring that back to Ukraine. This is one of our representatives in Germany, the Germany-based organization of Ukrainian youth, that are now focused on disinformation in media lectures and some of the political activism that is also very important for us. Of course, the cultural part plays a vital role, but we want to, of course, involve and teach this kind of awareness for our Ukrainian youth to be active, even if they're not in Ukraine itself. You can see here some of the things that we are planning to do, because there is a huge work to be done in terms of implementing and finalizing the strategy for the social media and promotion of this project. And yeah, we're just trying to promote the brightest initiatives. And I think that after the Ukrainian youth becomes just Ukrainian diaspora in abroad, this will be children that will become their children that are becoming Ukrainian youth. It is a constant process for growth, and I hope that it will just enlighten the opportunities for Ukraine to strengthen the capacity for recovery and reconstruction. And I'm sure that my colleagues from the UNICEF Youth Council and Kyiv City Council will talk more, Anna and Vlad. So yeah, we will elaborate on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darina, for providing these insights. A short reminder to the participants, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat and we will come back to them. Next up are Anna Vietrova and Vlad Levchuk. Anna Vietrova is Rebuild Ukraine ambassador at the European Youth Parliament and head of the Commission of International Coordination in Tourism in the Kharkiv Youth City Council. She makes clear sustainable and transparent recovery can only be ensured if the young people of Ukraine are empowered to drive the change. Vlad Levchuk is member of the UNICEF Young People Advisory Board Ukraine and engaged in the Kyiv Youth City Council. He says, history shows that the youth are often at the forefront of recovery efforts, and young Ukrainians are not the exception. Welcome, the two of you. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And let's begin then. First, when you Google quotes about youth participation, the first search result is, let us ensure that all young people have every opportunity to participate fully in the lives of their societies. By Kofi Annan. It's not that I didn't have time to look for more, it's that I agree. So hello, Vlad and I are young Ukrainians, and we are forever thankful for being a part of our society, Europe. So before we begin, Europeans, I would like to thank you for standing with and for us as Kindern of Hilfe and Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. ensures that our voices are presented with a chance to share matters that we are excited and worried about, yet always ready to talk about. So now, please Google Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city, and also my hometown. You're giving a set of images of landmarks as Freedom Square, the Karazin University, Miro Stream, and I can go on, trust me. But then please go to the articles of Reuters, The Economist, and Kiev Independent. You'll read about daily Russian missile attacks targeting civilians, including young people. That's how it feels to live in this dual reality in the Kharkiv region. It's how it feels to be here, where the buildings downtown are beautiful in one set of images from the past. But everyone can notice that there are no windows or roofs. Statues are covered and shops are closed due to the ongoing air raids in another set of images in the present. The Kharkiv City Youth Council was established more than 8 years ago and has been active since then, witnessing both the past and the present. Now the team of more than 130 people is organized into 3 departments and 6 commissions, working with young people between 14 and 35 years old. The Youth Council is a multiplier of the youth voices in Kharkiv, which aims to A, engage, B, inform, and C, represent young people. So for example, prior to the full-scale invasion, my commission of the International Coordination and Tourism led a course called School of Young Diplomat for over 100 young people interested in global affairs. To be honest, it seems unreal that we could gather more than 50 people at the same building at once. Because now we face numerous obstacles that come with living only 30 kilometers from the Russian border. And sadly, I won't be able to address all of them tonight, but we still hope to talk about our successful cases we are particularly proud of, and also what changed. So with that, I want to pass on to Vlad, and thank you.
Als allerersten wollte ich ganz herzlich Plattform Wiederaufbau Ukraine und Kindernothilfe für die Einladung bedanken. It is truly a privilege to be presented at such event of a tremendous importance. And for me, as the representative of youth, it is so heartwarming to understand that we are united despite of the terrors and nightmares that we are going through in our country. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Vlad, and I'm 19 years old student of law here in Kyiv, Ukraine. Besides, I'm also honored to be the member of the Kyiv Youth City Council and the youth advisor of UNICEF Ukraine. My hometown is Kyiv. It is the capital of Ukraine. It is heart and magnet for the young people in our country. And before the war in 2014, before the full-scale invasion in 2022, our city was an epicenter for all activities, the entertaining, the festivals for youth, the children, their families. But now our focus has drastically changed, and we work primarily with the integration of the internally displaced people, the rebuilding and reconstruction, the protection of the socially marginalized groups, the education of pupils and students, the work with NGOs, volunteers, veterans, etc., etc. And the engines for these fields to be implemented is indeed the youth. I belong to the Kyiv Youth City Council. It is the advisory body alongside the Kyiv City Council. It means that we are engaged constantly in the youth policy framing on the municipal level, providing expertise in the relevant fields. And in lots of countries, such bodies are regarded as, I don't know, like helpers for politicians, or conversely, the places where the parties are being held. However, we are much more than that. Once I found a catchy phrase that says that youngsters became driving force for change in Ukraine. And maybe it sounds a little bit posh or youngish. It is true, because in lots of regions, our youngsters rebuild houses by their own, help animals, take care of elder people, rule charity funds in their 17, negotiate with politicians, or sacrifice their lives at the battlefield. And we want you to remember that the youth are always for democracy. Youth are for rule of law. Youth are for sustainability, for peace, and our victory. So thank you so much for your support, and let us rebuild Ukraine together.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Vlad. So Anna, you are a member of the Kharkiv Youth City Council, and Vlad, you are a member and engaged in the Kyiv Youth City Council. What are the benefits of including your bodies in recovery processes in Ukraine?
I guess I'll begin to answer this question. You know, like the share of young people that are engaged in volunteering, for example, has increased from 20% to the 42%. And the share of young people who also like love the country and want to return is 76%, according to the UNDP report last year. So like the youth councils are, as I said, the magnets. They are the unified cores, institutionalized for the youth involvement with the infrastructure developed for the project implementation. And yes, they are mostly the advisory bodies. They have the impact on the future decision making. So I guess that the benefit is kind of vivid because it creates the condition for the reintegration, for the socialization of those groups, the adaptation, development of young people that belong to the different groups, and their participation in the country's recovery. And I guess that it's our main goal that can be achieved through the councils, through the participatory budgets, and so on.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, well said. But with that, you know, I think we should look into young people's resilience because, for example, as Vlad mentioned before, the chain drastically changed. The focus drastically changed since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. And for example, the Kharkiv City Youth Council was taking an active part in the project and platforms PVDIA that united volunteers, state, and business initiatives for humanitarian and aid and support services to the citizens of Ukraine during the war. Because as we talk about reconstruction, we talk about reconstruction now. So youth councils serve as a platform, uniting different subgroups of young people, including but not limited to students, young professionals, entrepreneurs, young people who were internally displaced. So such advisory bodies accumulate the resources by building a strong network in Ukraine and abroad, adopting new practices in accordance with Sigma principles.
Now, one of the benefits of having you here is that you can really report firsthand about the current situation. What are the main challenges in Kyiv and in Kharkiv in terms of meaningful youth participation?
I guess that the situation really differs based primarily on the situation with the safety, because I guess that Anna will cover this issue, but the common thing is indeed the restrictions with the martial law, the safety restrictions, I don't know, like the shellings, the air raid alarms constantly. And it means from this stuff, it follows that the spheres for the Ukrainians' survival are being prioritized. And unfortunately, but it's obvious that it's kind of, you know, like the second, third priority. But also I would say that and the subsequent thing is the lack of financial support, because, you know, like youth, they are from, like UNICEF says, yeah, for like from 14 to 21, and they don't have like money in their own. And moreover, these young people who are capable of changing the country, they left the country, and the brain drain is you know, like being accelerated. So I guess the 3 points, like in my opinion, are the most severe in the current situation.
Yeah, and you know, like speaking of the situation, yes, it differs because there are multiple safety precautions that we must follow, since it takes like as little as 40 seconds for a missile to reach a target. That's already longer than we've been answering this question for, and that's how close we are. So most discussions, sessions, conferences are held either online like this one or in the limited spaces underground. But for us to conduct events in person in those limited spaces underground, we lack stable and guaranteed financial support because we experience outflow of offers and opportunities from donor organizations in Kharkiv because it's a frontline city. And with that, a lot of young people are leaving. So we are also experiencing brain drain. So to kind of summarize that, first, safety precautions. Second of all, it's limited number of spaces underground, brain drain, and the lack of stable and guaranteed financial support.
Thank you for making this clear. Now, what would need to change? What needs to change in order to tackle these problems?
It will be really easy to answer, but not so easy to reach. But the Ukraine's victory, I would say that it's indeed the best formula for that. But being serious, like how to change, it means the answers for the issues that Anya summarized, like briefly. It is the investing in youth projects. So like it has to be really guaranteed. It has to be secure, and we have to have legitimate expectations that in the nearest future, for example, as I create a plan, the idea, the project, it will be supported anyway, and I do not have to launch the crowdfunding or, I don't know, like go to the streets and to collect money from the people. It has to be secure funding sources, banks for initiatives as are created in many municipalities. It also has to be the built infrastructure. I mean, like the user-friendly infrastructure, not only the hospitals, but also the hubs, like the locations where the youth can gather, and like the diverse youth participation can be guaranteed, because it is not a privilege, as I say, it is a leitmotif of the normal life. And indeed, the cross connection between those who are in Ukraine and those who are in diaspora, who flew from Ukraine, but have the best practices to be implemented. So thanks to Darina, I hope that it will be also reached in the nearest future.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And not to repeat Vlad here, but building and equipping underground infrastructures and youth centers with easily accessible shelters would be one of the solutions, especially knowing that there not much we can change with the use about the situation overall, right? So we need to equip ourselves and we need to adapt as much as we can. With that, obviously, investments in financial support is the must-have. But in addition to what Vlad said, I think training for personnel on the topic of youth policy implementation would be very helpful to ensure recruitment and representation of well-educated young professionals in the local and national government, because that's something that would help us to understand each other better when it comes to the communication with the governmental institutions in Ukraine and abroad.
Do you have concrete examples of successful youth participation projects connected to recovery and reconstruction from your perspectives as members of the youth city councils?
Well, I think any example of youth participation would be connected to recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, because we're looking to constant improvement and engagement of young people that will help us to perform the reforms and recover the country by uniting people about around the same idea that they're working with right now. So when I think about that, like one of the latest projects that the Kharkiv City Youth Council conducted was the forum, and it was called Kharkiv Cultural. So it was focusing on the fact that we are looking into things that we can preserve in Kharkiv and how rich its history is, and why it's important to maintain the cultural aspect of the city while still fighting for its existence and its protection. So it's one of those examples when we collaborated with projects such as Upshift, conducted by the UNICEF and other partners, to make sure that young people are aware of things and still feel connected to things they love and things they want to rebuild.
I also have another example. I guess it's not by the Kyiv City Council, neither the Kharkiv, but it is like the BUR, the Building Ukraine Together, great initiative. And it rose first in 2014 as the volunteer action of the Ukrainian educational platform. And as I previously mentioned, it was about restoring houses. So the houses were destroyed in the east of Ukraine by the war, and now the volunteers rebuild facilities damaged by the war, not only in the east of Ukraine, but in the whole country. and set up short, long-term shelters for those that lost their homes due to Russian aggression. They become ambassadors of change in local communities. They volunteer, they develop as leaders, create mentorship programs. So it's like basically about this cross-functional thing that you do not only make the volunteer program, but also raise another generation of young people that will foster those challenges in the nearest future.
Speaking about future, Vlad, how do you envision the future of youth engagement in Ukraine?
And to refer to something that Darina said previously, I think the youth engagement will foster this cross-cultural dialogue and drive the change by taking part in the sustainable reconstruction of Ukraine. Because something that I'm talking about can be found in vision paper towards sustainable reconstruction of Ukraine, Youth Perspective from Europe. And it was the result of the project led by European Youth Parliament, and it was called Rebuild Ukraine Lab, when 20 ambassadors from Ukraine and Europe formed a vision of recovery process on 6 pivotal areas. And it serves as a message of hope and solidarity that reflects the joint commitment of Ukrainians and Europeans. So I think like a bit more of information could be found there if you're really interested. But yeah, my main point is that it could be built on the cross-cultural dialogue.
I will also add to that like my motto for the recovery is that it has to be inclusive, it has to be overall, it has to be sustainable, and it has to be participative. And like me and Anna, we are both in the UNICEF Ukraine. We are the youth advisors, and we are proud, privileged to host the first in Ukraine ever local conference of youth. It is like the biggest a conference under the UN body that hosting conference of parties, COP, the climate conference that was in Dubai last year. And this year we will organize this in Ukraine. And the aim of this is indeed to create the same vision paper to combat the ecological consequences, for the adaptation, mitigation, for the reconstruction of Ukraine, but not only to write this, but in the next year to implement it, to create local projects for the youth. Just like, oh, we have this written, we will implement. So no just space for ideas, yes it is, but nothing to like generate because it's already ready. You just have to have finance and implement till like rebuilding of Ukraine basically.
Thank you very much for your input, Vlad, and also Anna. We now come to the next section, which is the Q&A session. We are now opening the floor for discussion. I can already see some questions in the chat, but also feel free to ask more questions. And we can start with a question to Darina. Please elaborate more on the structure of your youth council. How is it organized? What funding does it get? And who has a say in it?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer this one. On the structure itself, we have bilateral part in our decision making, meaning that we have 2 heads of the youth council that gives us more of the overview of the organization and the activities we have. Then we have several departments that focus on either Ukrainian diaspora or communicating with internationals only, or with international organizations. We have a project management team that is also responsible for certain forums, projects, if you want to spread it to Ukrainian youth abroad or Ukrainian youth in Ukraine. And on the Ukrainian diaspora I was talking to you about, we kind of have like a business model in our communication. I am coming from the B2B background in working in tech consultancy, and I integrated the module with, for example, OKRs with the objectives and key results, on KPIs, on setting some of the we have a marketing team either than communication team working. And the most important part and the key structure and some of the point that I want to stress is the interaction between our team that is located in Ukraine and a Ukrainian team that is located in each country. So we have at least 2 representatives of our team working with the whole country itself, or with the Ukrainian youth itself, meaning that they're not separated or they do not do projects. But for example, our Ukrainian youth takes care of Ukrainian youth abroad, and we show it. And Ukrainian youth abroad is interested what is going on in Ukraine, not only because of the bombings or any urgent news that's happening.
Thank you, Darina. Next question. What are your communication and decision-making structures? And maybe that one goes to Anna and Vlad.
Shall I start? Probably. Okay, so talking about the communication and decision-making structures, so like we are the advisory body. It means like we have Kyiv City Council, that is, I would say in Germany is something like a Rathaus, yeah, where the Bürgermeister sits, and we have this Landparlament, yes, and we are the advisory body. So we consult them in the youth policy related projects. And for example, they have the draft of law that they want to implement, and we give them the, I would say, we revise it, we give some I don't know, like adjustments to it, whether it suits our vision of the youth policy in Kyiv or not. Moreover, we have our own bureaucratic mechanisms. So we have also like some committees, we have the foreign affairs and so on. So we are both related to the Kyiv City Council, where we help them and assist with the drafting of quasi-legislation. And secondly, we communicate and build the networking with the youth in Kyiv, in the foreign countries. For example, Leipzig is also the city partner of Kyiv, and we communicate with them. So it is built, and we will just only enhance it because we are created since November last year. And it's, you know, like something is better is coming.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say in terms of like how we communicate with the government, because it's pretty much similar to what just Vlad mentioned, because that's all, you know, described by the law about the youth in Ukraine. So that's not something that we can change about it. And the only difference is that, for example, the Kyiv City Youth Council is connected to the city council when we are connected to the Kharkiv mayor. So we advise particularly him and not the whole council. But regarding the communication, yes, we serve as a bridge. So we provide the feedback, and we also, again, advise. When it comes to international communication, we sign memorandums. So for example, Kharkiv City Youth Council is very active when it comes to collaboration with Polish youth councils. We conduct forums together online, but also there is a strong communication between, in order to ensure that, you know, we exchange our experiences and stuff like that. And of course, decision-making structures, it's something that we can have inside our Kharkiv City Youth Councils, and usually it's exercised through sessions. And each commission and each department makes their own decisions by working together and implementing projects.
Thank you, Anna. I can see another question for you. What kind of ambassadors are those who choose them, and what background of youth organization do they have?
Yes, so it refers to Rebuild Ukraine Lab, right, by the European Youth Parliament. Those 20 ambassadors are 20 young people. 10 of them are from Ukraine, and the other 10 are from different countries in Europe, so the European Union. They were chosen by the International Office of the European Youth Parliament. And since December of 2022, we've been working together. First, we organized the hub, where both in Ukraine and in Warsaw, we worked together on our vision of 6 different areas of reconstruction of Ukraine. So each of us has different background in youth organizations. So some of them are just the members of European Youth Parliament and have some involvement on the local level, and some of them are not the members. So it's very diverse. If you're interested in, in detail, you can always visit the website about that. But, just to cover it up, it's we are all from diverse backgrounds. So thank you for the question.
Now, Robin Feis is asking a question that I also had in mind. What are your expectations for the upcoming Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin? And I think this question goes to the three of you.
Let me start answering this one. I'm extremely curious and excited about the upcoming Ukraine Recovery Conference, and I'm really glad that it's going to be held in Germany in particular, because there are a lot of interested not only Ukrainian but also German stakeholders that would be interested to set the. I think the planning for this one is already set, but we now need to talk about the real actions and what kind of contribution from the international ones, and in particular the German ones, because there will be a big focus on it, will be put out, for example, on the plan that, for example, the Office of the President has with the peace formula, or the concrete sectors that are divided for the Ukraine recovery and reconstruction itself. And for the Ukrainian part, I think it's the most important one to, well, if we talk business, is to engage and interact, engage in investment. But if we talk about all the political decisions, we need to say that the war is not very far from what is happening in the other part of the world, and we need to see that international ones are ready to support us, and we can clearly say that that's very great, but we already need to put the clear action, and some of the projects that are coming after the Ukraine Recovery Conference will be implemented in-house or on the ground.
I will just briefly add that I agree totally, and like Ukraine Recovery Conference, it is, I would say, economy-related conference. It is obviously that the outcomes, the key goal is to mobilize the support for reconstruction, modernization of Ukraine. But what is relatable for me is the human dimension of this conference, and one of the goals is for the human capital of the future of Ukraine. For me, it is the important goal to ensure that the education, the healthcare, and the social services infrastructure will be rebuilt in the way that will be, to annihilate the social cohesion and the absence of inclusive, those issues, because it is a prime issue nowadays that the youth is not fully engaged even in those processes of the education stuff that are relatable with them. So yeah, it is indeed about the human dimension, what I expect from the recovery conference to give us the answers, how the youth will be specifically involved in the reconstruction, will be fully covered or just the parts of them, how it will still, so like many questions, hope to see answers.
Yeah, I'm trying to conclude what my colleague said, and I mean, first of all, of course, I would like to see the youth participation taken into account, and I'm talking about its inclusion into different areas and things that maybe are not as obvious. Because, for example, the new revolutionary thing that happened, right, the Ukraine facility, that's the action we expected. So we wanted that to happen in order to see and to be assured that we are supported. So I think the upcoming Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin will serve as a similar message and a similar idea that we are taking the action towards the reconstruction and reconstruction of building back better, and not just building back now. And so building back better and now would be the best outcome. So thank you.
There was a question of Victoria Traut. I saw your hand. Would you like to ask the question here?
Yes, thank you very much. Is the connection all right? Yeah, my question was to Darina, and I didn't quite hear the answer, so I ask again. Do I understand it correctly that this youth council you're working in, you're like all employees and just appear to be young? Because I didn't understand how the structure comes together. I'm missing some democratic voting level, how young people come together, who decides what decisions are made. Maybe you can explain this point. So am I right? Are you just young people in this underbody of the ministry?
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Victoria, for pointing out and focusing on this, because it's very important. For example, the structure is very important in decision-making process itself in terms of communication with the ministry. So we have the head of the organization that is directly communicating with the ministry and the specific department that is under the record of that Youth Council is under the record. And for us, so is the whole structure of the organization, which is super separate in terms of consultations. So it's an officially established consultation body for the ministry. Youth Council. So if we are to propose some of the agenda that's going to be discussed in the ministry itself, we have the right and we're entitled to do so, and the head is entitled to put all of the questions that we have and the considerations on youth to the ministry agenda, and it should be taken into consideration because already the responsibility of the department that is both reporting to us and we're reporting to them as well. If you're talking about the team, which is a focus group, because it's a very huge topic to cover and to unite and build the network of Ukrainian youth abroad, then we're talking about the kind of business model that I told you about, that our team and the team of Ukrainian youth abroad is working together. So if they are to implement some kind of the projects, or they have a demand, I mean Ukrainian youth abroad, they have a demand for financing or for some of the partners or for the projects, then they pass it to me as the head of this mission, because it's going to be kind of a national mission on uniting Ukrainian youth abroad. And then I am the one to take in the decision and communicating directly with the ministry, not mentioning like the head or something, but the ministry itself, whether we're including it in the agenda. I hope that clarifies your question.
Thank you very much. Not quite, and because you mentioned other countries, if I may, just to ask again, where you've worked with, what I'm missing, and it is great that all these youth councils are there and do what they do, what you do. What is missing for me at the moment is this self-organized youth organization movement, which there is one in Ukraine, but it is fighting for survival for several years because it is not recognized by the government, the National Youth Council. It is only one, it can be only one for one country. In Ukraine, we have the situation, there are like 4 national youth national organizations for youth, and all international partners trying to cooperate to make partnership with Ukrainian National Youth Council get really frustrated because they don't understand the system. And the system is kind of wrong because there is one National Youth Council and it is not recognized by the government. And why it is not okay? Because this self-organized, democratically elected, voluntarily youth board has absolute independence and can decide absolutely to 100% which direction the youth organizations, which are built in one umbrella organization, move. And for now, they are not present in this conference at all. And they are not recognized by the Ukrainian government and not invited to be there. And this is what I'm trying to find out. Is there anybody from National Youth Council of Ukraine taking part in this organization and conference at the end, who is not employee?
Victoria, please come to an end. Thank you. Darina, would you like to answer? I know that there is a little emergency, so you will only have the chance to answer this one question and then you will leave. Thank you so much for being here, but maybe there's space for this one answer. Thank you.
Of course, and Victoria, thank you so much for paying this attention, because I'm stressing it, we're an official consultative and advisory body of the ministry. We are very great partners actually with the National Youth Council, the one that you're talking about. The National Youth Council that you're talking about is the umbrella organization of some of the NGOs, as well youth councils that we have in Ukraine. So it's not necessarily that our youth council reports to them, but it may be the case. We are very great partners with them. If you want, we can, after this event, network and share the contacts because they are doing an amazing job in involving Ukrainian youth in recovery and reconstruction. On our end, we're also trying to support them and they support us.
Thank you so much, Darina. And I also saw the hand of Vlad, if you would like to add something.
Yeah, I just like to add one thing that the situation in Ukraine is particularly interesting because it is multifaceted and we have an abundance of the youth organizations and NGOs. And if we're talking about the National Youth Council of Ukraine, the Darina has like truly precise said that it is indeed the the NGO, yeah, but it is rather the platform. It is the platform for young people that consists of other NGOs. And if you visit the website of the National Youth Council of Ukraine, you can see that the members to this council are other organizations. For example, I don't know, like ELSA, the European Law Student Association, to which I belong because I'm the student of law, or I don't know, like the Let's Do It Ukraine, the climate initiative, and lots of others. So it's kind of, you know, like the organization to which other organizations belong, and it is serves as an umbrella for those to be the voice, the unified like voice, and they indeed participate in the exchange with the politicians, with the Ministry of Youth and Sport, with the international experts, and so on.
Thank you for making this clear, Vlad. I can see one last hand, but I can't read the name. So the person is invited to speak now.
Вітаю. Я думаю, що йдеться про мене. Мене звати Олена Подбіт-Франківська.
I'm Olena from Ivano-Frankivsk. Olena Podbet-Frankivska, sorry, and I represent just one of the mentioned unions that has some 9 Ukraine's biggest youth and children organizations in Ukraine as members.
Чи чути мене? Окей, так. Мій Zoom мене дезорієнтував. Тож,
I hope you can hear me.
я дозволю собі прокоментувати, чи
So,
відповісти на питання,
I would allow
яке
myself
поставила Вікторія.
Giving a comment to the question from Victoria.
В Україні і справді існує певний парадокс, тому що
Now, there's a certain paradoxical situation in Ukraine because the youth councils, according to our laws, make for a very specific format. These are established at behest of the government, the local or national level. That is, they're not CSOs per se. Youth councils are like institutions with a special status. They're neither the government ones nor civic society organizations. On the other hand, there is a law on youth in Ukraine which speaks of a national youth council that should have been established under this law, and it was adopted before the war. It should have been established at the level of prime minister and the whole cabinet. And that national youth council should have been composed like 50% of ministry representatives and 50% places should have been given to youth organizations, unions, and so on. Instead of that, we have this youth council, the National Youth Council, still being inoperative. The government official said the whole thing has been mothballed temporarily because of the war. Now we are in a situation when we have like civil society organizations working as platforms. They may include youth councils and other youth organizations. I myself represent one of them, by the way. We are called the National Youth Council, but well, we are not the one I mentioned initially. So we have a wealth of youth councils at all levels, from the ministerial one that is being represented now to lower levels like community level, municipal level. And we've got two speakers from the city, from municipal level today, from Kiev, from Kharkiv Youth Councils. It is my understanding that the Kharkiv Youth Council has been established with the mayor's office, not even with the not with the city council, but with the mayor's office, which makes for a really unique situation. Well, in our protection, I can tell that I started working with youth policy about a decade ago, and there was nothing at the time. Youth councils, no youth centers, nothing. So yes, it looks chaotic, and sorry for that, but we are still like in the process of building the youth policy as such. On the other hand, I'd like to thank you for bringing it out to our attention that neither of the four platforms. So yeah, we need to understand there is the civic society and there are youth organizations created at the behest of the government. Both are nice, but these are two separate processes. So the uniform voice of the civic society, of the young part of it, we don't have it yet. There is this type of voice represented by the current youth council. So sorry, this is my comment.
Thank you very much for clarifying also that there is probably still room for discussion, and unfortunately, this room we cannot provide right now because we will come to the next section, but also feel invited to connect through this event and keep on talking about these issues. Now we come to the last section, which is the peer-to-peer exchange. We plan to have 3 different breakout rooms now. As Darina needed to leave, there will be 2 breakout rooms, each of them guided by Anna and Vlad. We will have a little bit less than 20 minutes to discuss this question. How can you include forms of youth participation into your work in Ukraine? If you don't know how to enter the breakout rooms, it's on this slide described. And we see each other again in, I would say, maybe 17 minutes.
Take when it comes to, but with that, something that we also touched on was the training of both the personnel and the youth councils about the implementation of youth policy, and also the democratic principles that one of the participants brought up. With that, we did talk about the challenges and other cases that could be that could serve an example of how the youth council impacts the government on rural, suburban, and urban areas, but also on different levels, such as local, city-related, right, regional, and also national, or connected to different funds or other organizations. But that's, I hope I covered as much as I could.
Thank you, Anna. Vlad, what did your group discuss?
I would say that it was pretty sweaty and the discussions were truly amazing. Thank you to all participants in our breakout room. We've discussed primarily what we have ended our common discussion about the issue of the politicization of the youth movement in Ukraine, and we shared our views, what is indeed the Youth Council, what it has to be. I have briefly stated about my path, how my Youth City Council was created, what is the intention of creation, and how democratically free with the e-technologies it will be elected next year. Also, we have shared our views regarding how the youth participation is in Western Europe and which steps I would say, which gap, we have to resolve in the Ukrainian context. So I'm really thankful for sharing this. I truly support what you have said, all of you, just to mention, that I'm not the opponent for these views. And it is a true privilege for me. I will leave my email here so you can also reach me and we can discuss. My LinkedIn, Facebook is also with my name in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vlad. And I can only emphasize that you should really connect and keep on discussing all these questions. This event, however, has come to an end now. Thanks to all participants, especially thanks to our speakers. I think your engagement is really impressive, and we got a clear idea of what you are doing right now. And thank you also to the translators, Velja Kevic and Nadia Lepak. And finally, special thanks to Mariusz Jedliczka and Elisa Harmsen for their great support. We would like to make you aware of 2 events happening in the next week. One on inclusive reconstruction and one regarding the role of social entrepreneurship in Ukraine's reconstruction. You can find the link with information in the chat. And if you want to get in direct contact with other platform participants, join the LinkedIn group. The link is also in the chat. Additionally, we invite you to give us feedback on this event via our feedback form. On the slide, you'll find the QR code. So yeah, nothing left to say. Thank you very much for joining this event and have a nice evening.